Pleasant day, everyone. My name is Lizel May Lumor, a student of Davao Winchester Colleges Incorporated, taking up the course of Bachelor of Science in Criminology, 3rd year, Section 2. And now, I'm just going to present my oral video presentation and the subject CLG2, instructed by Ma'am Lanyanhara Lacabalurin. And now, I'm just going to discuss for the following topics. First is, what is human rights? Human rights are freedoms established by custom or international agreement that impose standards of conduct on all nations. Human rights are distinct from civil liberties, which are freedoms established by the law of a particular state and applied by the state in its own jurisdiction. Human rights are commonly understood as inalienable fundamental rights to which a person is inherently entitled simply because she or he is a human being. These rights may exist as natural rights or as a legal rights in both national and international law. What are the basic characteristics of human rights? The following are the basic characteristics of human rights. First is inherent. Human rights are inherent because they are not granted by any person or authority. Number 2, fundamental. Human rights are fundamental rights because without them, the life and dignity of man will be meaningless. 3, inalienable. Human rights cannot be taken away. No one has the right to deprive other person of them for any person. People still have human rights even when the laws of their countries do not recognize them or when they violate them. Human rights are inalienable. Human rights are inalienable because A, they cannot be rightfully taken away from a free individual. B, they cannot be given away or be forfeited. 4, imprescriptible. Human rights do not prescribe and cannot be lost even if one fails to use or assert them, even by a long passage of time. Indivisible. To live in dignity, all human beings are entitled to freedom, security, and decent standard of living concurrently. 6, universal. Human rights are universal in application, and they apply irrespective of one's origin, status, or condition or place where one lives. Human rights are the same for all human beings, regardless of the race, sex, religion, political, or other opinion, national or social origin. We are all born free and equal in dignity and rights. Human rights are universal. 7, interdependent. Human rights are interdependent because the fulfillment of exercise of one cannot be had without the realization of the other. Classification. Human rights can be classified and organized in a number of different ways at an international level. The most common categorization of human rights has been to split them into civil and political rights and economic, social, and cultural rights. Economic, social, and cultural rights are enshrined in Articles 22 to 28 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Indivisibility. The ideal of free human beings enjoying civil and political freedom and freedom from fear and want can only be achieved if conditions are created whereby everyone may enjoy his civil and political rights as well as his social, economic, and cultural rights. The indivisibility and interdependence of all human rights has been confirmed by the 1993 Vienna Declaration and Program of Action. All human rights are universal, indivisible, and interdependent and related. The international community must treat human rights globally in a fair and equal manner, on the same footing and with the same emphasis. Some Western cultures have often given priority to civil and political rights, sometimes at the expense of economic and social rights such as the right to work, to education, health, and housing. Similarly, the ex-Soviet bloc countries and Asian countries have tended to give priority to economic, social, and cultural rights but have often failed to provide civil and political rights. Categorization. Opponents of the indivisibility of human rights argue that economic, social, and cultural rights are fundamentally different from civil and political rights and require completely different approaches. Economic, social, and cultural rights are argued to be passive, meaning that they require active provision of entitlements by the state. Resource intensity, meaning that they are expensive and difficult to provide. Progressive, meaning that they will significant time to implement value, meaning they cannot be quantitatively measured, and whether they are adequately provided or not is difficult to judge. Ideologically divisive, political, meaning that there is no consensus on what should and shouldn't be provided as a right. Socialist, as opposed to capitalist, non-justiciable, meaning that their provision or the breach of them cannot be judged in a court of law. Aspiration or goals as opposed to real legal rights. Similarly, civil and political rights are categorized as negative, meaning the state can protect them simply by taking no action. Cost-free, immediate, meaning they can be immediately provided if the state decides to precise, meaning their provisions is easy to judge and measure. Non-ideological, non-political, capitalist, justiciable, real legal rights. Three generations. Another categorization offered by Karl Vasak is that there are three generations of human rights. First generation, civil and political rights. These are liberty-orientated and include the rights to life, liberty, and security of the individual, freedom from torture and slavery, political participation, freedom of opinion, expression, thought, conscience, and religion, freedom of association and assembly. Second generation, economic, social, and cultural rights. These are security-orientated rights, for example, the rights to work, education, reasonable standard of living, food, shelter, and healthcare. Third generation, solidarity rights. These include the rights to live in an environment that is clean and protected from destruction, a rights to cultural, political, and economic development, rights to self-determination. Out of this generation, the third generation is the most debated and lacks of both legal and political recognition. This categorization is at odds with the indivisibility of rights, as it implicitly states that some rights can exist without others. The right is enshrined in Article 6 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Every human being has inherent to life. This right shall be protected by law. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life. Number 2, in countries which have not abolished the death penalty, sentence of death may be imposed only for the most serious crimes in accordance with the law enforced at the time of the commission of the crime and cannot contrary to the provisions of the present covenant and to the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. This penalty can only be carried out pursuant to a final judgment rendered by a competent court. Number 3, when deprivation of life constitutes the crime of genocide, it is understood that nothing in this article shall authorize any state party to the present covenant to derogate in any way from any obligation assumed under the provision of the Convention and the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. 4. Anyone sentenced to death shall have the right to seek pardon or commutation of the sentence. Amnesty, pardon, or commutation of the sentence of death may be granted in all cases. Number 5. Sentence of death shall not be imposed for crimes committed by persons below 18 years of age and shall not be carried out on pregnant women. 6. Nothing in this article shall be invoked to delay or to prevent the abolition of capital punishment by any state party to the present covenant. The Convention on the Rights of the Child contains this right. Article 6. 1. States parties recognize that every child has the inherent right to life. Number 2. States parties shall ensure to the maximum extent possible the survival and development of the child. It also contained in Article 11 of the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights to all migrant workers and members of their families. Number 1. No migrant worker of member of his or her family shall be held in slavery or servitude. 2. 2, no migrant worker or member of his or her family shall be required to perform forced or compulsory labor. Number 3, paragraph 2 of the present article shall not be held to preclude in states where imprisonment with hard labor may be imposed as punishment for a crime. The performance of a hard labor in pursuance of a sentence to such punishment by competent court. Number 4, for the purpose of the present article, the third force of compulsory labor shall not include a. Any work or service not referred to in paragraph 3 of the present article normally required of a person who is under detention in consequence of a lawful order of a court or a person during conditional release from such detention. B. In any service exacted in cases of emergency or calamity threatening the life or well-being of the community. C. In a work or service that forms part of normal civil obligation, so far as it is imposed also on citizens of the state concerned. Every human being shall be entitled to respect for his life and the integrity of his person. No one may be arbitrarily deprived of this right. 5 primary categories of human rights: civil rights, political rights, economic rights, social rights, cultural rights. What are the human rights principles? The rights that someone has simply because he or she is a human being and born into this world. 4 principles: human dignity, equality, non-discrimination, universality. Interdependency, indivisibility, and alienability, responsibilities. Human rights. Rights means moral power to hold rights to life, nationality, own property, rest and leisure, to do rights to remarry, peacefully assembly, run for public office, education, to admit freedom from torture and cruel, inhumane or degrading punishment, and freedom from arbitrary arrest, detention or exile, or to exact something, equal protection of the law, equal access to public service, equal pay for equal work. Human rights coined by alienarists built to replace rights of man. Nature means human rights are more than legal concepts. They are essence of man. They are what make man human. That is why they are called human rights. Deny them and you deny man's humanity. Characteristics of human rights: universal, internationally guaranteed, legally protected, protects individuals or groups, cannot be taken away, equal and indivisible, oblige states and state actors. Philosophical visions: human nature means a search for common secular inquiry and human reason. 400 BC is Mozi founded Muhe's School of Moral Philosophy in China. Importance of duty, self-sacrifice, and all-embracing respect for others, universally thought throughout the world. 300 BC is Chinese sage Mencius wrote on the human nature: humans are fundamentally good, but goodness needs to be nurtured. Asserted to relieve anxiety and eradicate strife, nothing is effective as an institution of corporate life based on a clear recognition of individual rights. Philosophical visions: human nature. 1750 BCE, King Hammurabi in Babylon, necessary to honor rule codes of justice among people, created one of the earliest legal codes to govern behavior. Ancient Egypt, explicit social justice, comfort the afflicted, refrain from unjust punishment, kill not, make distinction between the son of a man of importance and one of humble origin. Early Sanskrit writings in India. Responsibility of rulers for the welfare of people. No one should be allowed to suffer either because of poverty or of any deliberate actions on the part of others. Philosophical visions: human nature with spiritual or religious traditions, freedom of worship and other rights of his subject, other leaders from this area, impartial justice and social equality at no case should exist, since all from 16th century Hindu philosopher Chaitanya, there is only one case, humanity. Sikh leader Guru Gobind Singh proclaimed recognize all the human race as one. 10th century Al-Farabi, an Islamic philosopher, wrote The Outlook of the People of the City of Virtue, a vision of moral society in which all individuals were endowed with rights and live in love and charity with their neighbors. Philosophical visions. Natural humans focus on universal responsibilities and duties rather than what are now described as rights. Greek philosophers equal respect for all citizens into insotimia, equality before the law, in summa, equality in political power, isocracy and suffrage, isosophia. Marcus Aurelius Cicero, universal justice and law, guided human nature to act justly and be of service to others. This natural law binds all human society together, applies to every member of the whole human race, without distinction and unique dignity of each person. French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, man is born free but everywhere he is in chains. Precursors to 20th century human rights documents: 1750 BC Code of Hammurabi, Babylonia; BC Old Testament; BC Analects of Confucius; C New Testament; C Corinthians 15 Magna Carta, England; 1400 Code of Nizaholt, Aztec; 1648 Treaty of Westphalia, Europe; 1689 English Bill of Rights, England; 1776 Declaration of Independence, United States; 1787 United States Constitution; 1789 French Declaration on the Rights of Man and Citizens, France United States Bill of Rights; 12th, 19th, and 20th century human rights based on natural rights; 1863 Emancipation Proclamation, United States; 1864, 1940 and Geneva Conventions, International Red Cross; 1919 League of Nations Covenant, International Labor Organizations; 1920 Women gain the right to vote in the U.S., 1926 Slavery Convention; 1945 United Nations Charter, San Francisco; 1947 Mohandas Gandhi uses non-violent protest leading India to independence; legal basis UN Charter. Legal basis Human Rights Treaties, Convention, Covenants, Declarations contain detailed lists and definition of human rights and obligation of the state. 5 categories of human rights. Civil means the right to be treated as an equal to anyone else in society. Political means the right to vote, the freedom of speech, and to obtain information. Economic means the right to participate in an economy that benefits all and to desirable work. Social means the right to education, healthcare, food, clothing, shelter, and social security. Cultural means the right to freedom of religion, to speak the language, and to practice the culture of one's choice. Some civil rights: life, belief in own religion, opinion, free speech, non-discrimination according to sex, marriage, race, cultural background. Some political rights: vote in elections, freely form or join political parties, live in an independent country, stand for public office, freely disagree with views and policies of political leaders. Some economic rights: job works without exploitation, fair wages, safe working conditions, foreign trade unions, have adequate food, protection against labor malpractices. Some social rights: housing, education, health services, recreation facilities, clean environment, social security. Lastly, some cultural rights: use own language, develop cultural activities, phrases, ancestral domains, and develop own kinds of schooling. And that would be all for the human rights. Thank you.